Hello, welcome to the last of our Chats at Rezzed series. In this one, I talked to Hannah Flynn from Failbetter, pretty much about Sunless Skies, but more in a broad-ranging sense about life in independent game dev, about the industry, about how games relate to all sorts of different issues, musicals, Zoolander 2, and so on. Hopefully you find it interesting. I certainly did. Enjoy. Hello, I'm here with Hannah from Failbetter. Hello, Hannah.
Hello.
I always feel very strange introducing when we've just been having a conversation.
I've been here for the last 5 minutes with.
Yeah, indeed. Yes, we just sort of arbitrarily chosen a point to start recording a conversation with you. You're here with Sunless Skies.
Yes.
I guess it is a sort of soft open, like, how is that? How's the show gone? But also, like, how are things? How's the game? How's everything?
Good and good and good. I think I'm in a funny position because I've just been on maternity leave. I'm coming back to work. And when I went on maternity leave last April, we just finished the Kickstarter. And now I'm back and we've just released the second region into Sunless Skies. And it's like added a third axis to the graph of the game. Like it brings the game so much closer towards the final experience. And we're starting to see the things that I really, really enjoy, like people writing reviews of the game where the first paragraph is like, my captain was lost and alone.
They've done
like,
new games, Jen.
Sort of, the fluffy soft intro with a very characterful feel. But people are starting to respond to it in the way that they did to Sunless Sea,
right? Which
is exactly where we want to be. We're a few months off launch in September, so I feel like we're progressing in the right direction. And the show's been great, but I just haven't personally stood up for more than like 3 hours in the last year, because with a baby you crawl around on the floor a lot and you spend a lot of time sitting, so like my feet have turned to just like sausages of pain.
Is that we'll get back to the game in a sec, but like how have you, I guess, found that process of coming back to work? Because games industry not necessarily known for its,
it's weird.
Progressive policies towards, like, for example, is supporting paternity or maternity leave.
Yeah, Failbetter are, we try and be proactive in as many kind of socially responsible things as we can. As we can afford to and that we are able to. So for maternity leave, we did renegotiate our terms of maternity leave while I was heavily pregnant at the boardroom table, I think, which may have influenced it in some direction or another.
It was pertinent to you.
Yeah, it was relevant at the time. And they tried to have a discussion without me there, and then they said they felt like Trump's cabinet, so they invited me back in. It's good. It's weird. We're doing shared parental leave, so I was off work full-time for 6 months, and for the last 6 I've been working 2 days a week. One at home, one in the office. It's very specific information for you.
But yeah, it's good to know.
It's what is very weird about it is post-parenting, you understand the value of a minute, like that you never believed. If you come into the office and you've got 7 hours at your desk, I get more done on a Tuesday than I used to get done in a week.
Nothing happens on a Tuesday. I don't believe that for a second.
I do all my work on a Tuesday, then I'm like, peace to you all in a week for a baked potato. We typically eat baked potatoes on Tuesdays. That's,
okay.
Ritualistic.
This is the inside the studio vibe I wanted to get. Like,
this is what game development is really like.
The arcane fuel that powers Failbetter.
Heroes in Southwark on a Tuesday. If you want to meet Failbetter games, we're all in there eating tuna potato.
Tuna potato. Is that
that's my pick. Yeah.
Is there and I appreciate that we're getting off topic, but is there a diversity of potatoes?
Yes, most people like chili and cheese.
Oh, most people like chili and cheese.
Yeah, because what they do is they crack it open and they fill this potato in a way unmatched by physical science in any other restaurant.
I've only seen that kind of thing in Scotland.
Yeah, they go Scots on it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's been nice. It's been nice coming back to work slowly. Not being straight back in at 5 days a week, but it's also, and I didn't want to be out for a whole year because I like work too much, and I felt differently about it over the year, and coming back at 6 months was really hard because you are still very like physically hormonally attached to the baby at that time. But we have paternity leave that's better than statutory provision. We give like 8 weeks pay instead of 2. So we try and do something for both sides of it because it's unrealistic. 2 weeks paternity leave is unrealistic. It's not fair on the father, and it's not nice for the gestational partner, the father. Or, as I say, I have a wife, so I'm the gestational mother. We say terms, but it's not nice for the other parent, and it's not good for their well-being. It's not good for the baby's well-being. So, and it's nice now that a couple of us have kids. We've got another production baby due in August. So the family is growing.
It's nice. I would really hope that this is like a decade-long trend now, so not like the hottest new developments, but having more companies, particularly in the UK, like Failbetter, so mid-sized independent studios, I would really hope that that translates into a better quality of life for people who work at them. Like a move away from development farms and crunch towards...
We would never mandate crunch. I think there's a definition of terms around crunch that really interests me, because there are studios that mandate that you work until it's done, and there's a 3-line whip and everybody's in every day late, and it's indefinite, and that is like the toxic, nasty crunch. But at the other end is people who work with me who are so committed and so excited and passionate that they will work overtime off their own backs and tire themselves out in the same way, but not in a way that we would ever want them to do. But you almost don't want to slap someone's wrists for doing their job as best they possibly want to. So there's a really interesting spectrum there of what crunch is. We definitely don't mandate it and ask people to do it, but we're working so hard on Sunless Skies at the moment that even I'm like, I do extra hours when I'm not in the office, and you find yourself doing it. That's the problem with the industry, is that we're founded on passion in that way, and youngsters think that it's how it's done, and they come in thinking, I have to do all this extra work, I always have to have a side project, I always have to be working, and then burnout is still real whether the company mandates crunch or not.
I suppose the test is what happens when you have a period of calm, and whether people still feel pressure to be the last person in the office, etc.
And the weird thing is the games industry has a name for this, and this happens in all industries, and every other industry just doesn't talk about it in the way that we do. Like, I used to work in publishing, and everybody, all those loud people.
Like I keep saying in these little mini pods, this is a loud floor.
Yeah, and that's a loud place to be, the press room.
It's the quietest place at Rezzed, but it's also one of the loudest rooms I've ever been in.
Yeah, Dad, they could have. It's a tuned floor. It's a Nightingale floor. They've done it. It's like a level design thing.
Yeah, indeed. This is like a very challenging stealth level, and no one here is good at it. Like you were saying.
I've already lost. Anyway, in other industries, I would be at, in previous work, I'd be at work until 9, I'd get in before 8. There was never any discussion of it being unhealthy. It was totally expected and accepted. The senior people did it, except the people who had to leave because they had children. But it was almost like, if you don't have kids, you should be here all the time. And this is not... It doesn't have a name. Anywhere else it doesn't have a name. So... it's happening all over the place. Yes,
absolutely, and it's but maybe to bring it back, it is one of those things that is hopefully maybe the reason it's moved to the forefront of the attention so quickly in the games industry is the games industry is relatively young.
It is.
And you can see in the way the companies operate the point at which the army of 20-year-old computer scientists running companies in the 90s matured into people who had families and did actually want to leave at 5.
It's funny, isn't it, that we don't get there until the people at the top are going through that experience themselves, and then if they're good enough, they will pass that down to the people coming up behind them. But there is also, conversely, sometimes the opinion that, well, I had to suffer to get here, you should suffer too.
Yes.
Like, you should have the same expectations put on you that I did. Which is BS, obviously.
It is,
Make the world a better place if you have the power.
Right. And it also applies to, I think, the content of games as well. Like, it applies to, there's a tendency for certain forms of life experience to not show up until it is experienced by the person who is in charge.
Bonkers,
There's a kind of, I guess, it acts as a kind of conservative weight on what games can be about.
Which is mad, because games are an engine for empathy and an engine for understanding other people. And if you can't put yourself in another person's position to make something, like, why would you not try to do that? It baffles me. But perhaps because I have the non-typical experience, I'm constantly putting myself in the position of, Johnny White Boy with the gun.
Exactly. Quite. Well, you're absolutely right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's it. Johnny White Boy with the gun. That's my punchline.
Well, it's funny because I had a conversation earlier, which we'll also be able to listen to, with the Disco Elysium team, and the question for them was like, their game does star Jonathan Q. White Boy, and he doesn't have a gun because he's lost it. But that's just one of the first ways in which they start to critically unpick.
Interesting.
But I think that's the thing. That is a conscious decision for them. They sat down and figured out why they wanted to sell that story, and they have reasons for it, which is almost, I feel like, and maybe this will get us around to talking about your Space Train game, which we should probably talk about. But I found that's something that, talk about intentionality or something, but like, it's there is an absence sometimes of critical thinking about who gets foregrounded in a game or what stories specifically get followed.
Yeah.
Failbetter makes games that should tell a wide variety of stories, if anything.
Rich tapestry.
Like a quilt.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. What I would like, I guess the way I would think about it, and I'm interested to see if you think about it the same way, is that Sunless Skies, for example, Fallen London has always felt to me like a short story compilation with a linking game to some extent. Is that how you would think about things? I don't know if that's a question. I'm trying to bolt a question mark onto that statement.
I like that. I like the intonation. We got there. I think the way that our games work is a process of discovery on the part of the player that is unknown to us. Once you're over the initial thing in Fallen London, when you've broken out of Newgate Prison, you can go and do whatever. And we know you're in the early game, so you get these little pockets of story where we know that you are going to go. You're currently looking into your lodgings, or we know that you're currently looking to become a poet in the Vale Garden pubs. But we don't know what you've just done. Like, there is no linearity to them at all. That the tapestry is it sort of belongs to the player.
Yeah.
So we're able to do things where we put in, trans characters or loads of somebody was complaining recently. We have loads of female characters in positions of power before them.
Who was complaining about that?
Somebody on Reddit. It's always Reddit, isn't it?
It is always Reddit.
Well, they weren't complaining. They might listen to this. They were trying to start a critical discourse about whether the one thing that they couldn't stand, the one thing that broke their immersion, was the fact that there were so many women in positions of power.
It was a question of
it was like, why? Yeah, proportionately. Yeah. We had a whole thread on the Steam forums about why in Sunless Skies most of the NPCs were black. Well, those are the ones we launched with, and we have a bunch of characters of all different shapes, sizes, and types. It just so happens that the 6 or so in the early version of the game were black. So I'm kind of trying to string a point together here with some beads on a string. What am I saying? I'm saying that we are able to include all different types of stories. We hire different freelance writers to bring in different voices. We consult with people to make sure we have historical context and intentional writing. Right? So it's a business. It's the business of craft, and getting better at your craft means being able to write anything. And we do often have these debates about, well, can I really write that because that's not my lived experience? Well, if people would only write their lived experiences, then we really would be in a pickle in terms of diverse games content.
Yes, right, yes. Yeah.
So we consulted actually recently with some people called Clearly Represent Me, who really helped us with writing in trans and non-binary characters into Sunless Skies.
Right.
And we in fact hired one of their consultants to be a writer on Sunless Skies because she had the most incredible ideas that we could not derive them. We couldn't get to the amazing ideas that she was having because her lived experience was so different to ours.
Yeah.
We have trans characters in our games anyway, but they were not fully fleshed out in that way, to the point where a lot of players don't even notice that they're there.
Yeah.
Which is the really interesting phenomenon of people who are most likely to complain about it and think that they shouldn't, it's SJW bullshit, are also the people who would never catch a trans character written, or a non-binary character, someone who presents as femme but has perhaps masculine pronouns. They won't notice until someone points it out, and then it becomes a big deal.
Yeah.
For the people who it's a big deal for, the people who want that representation and need it, they'll notice it immediately, and it means so much to them.
Right.
So in a way, Failbetter kind of gets through. We get through without a lot of heat from people like Potako in Action. Although we were on there this week, so you never know. That's lies. I'm just lying.
Well, yes, but I can tell what you're saying, though, right? Which is that you're working in a sophisticated and granular way towards these aims. I was trying to avoid using the word, obviously the whole language used to describe these efforts to improve games, basically, which is fundamentally what they are, maybe carefully chosen. But you've sort of just gone out and done it.
Do the work.
Yes.
You do the work.
And I think that's the key, and I think a lot of larger... I think I'm interested in, maybe this is an interesting subject to discuss, I'm interested in the way that writers' rooms form and are formed at different levels of the games industry and at different studios, and obviously Failbetter has undergone changes from project to project, etc. And sort of, it sounds like put a lot of thought into who is in that room where it happens.
Don't start me on Hamilton.
Oh, no, okay, I'm not going to
I can't. We won't get anywhere near back to video games. Yes, we are under the narrative directorship of Chris Gardner at the moment, who has been with us a long time. He is an astonishingly talented person. He finds it very difficult to big himself up, but he is...
He's not here, so you can do
not
it for
here.
him.
Exactly, that's my job. That's all I do, is big up people who are too British to talk nicely about themselves. But he is very, very sensitive and humane and thoughtful, and he doesn't do anything... the thing that we often come up against, I think, in games is just people who are oblivious.
Yep.
They've come up playing a certain type of thing. They get an idea then of the shape of games being, this is what games can be. But Chris brings in people to consult with us. We've changed our hiring policies entirely recently. So next time we hire, we've got a new way to reach more people from a wider pool. Like, we take it so seriously. And then it's everything is about the setting of the intention at the top, and the way the people at the top act it translates to how people do their everyday work, and it translates into the games. It's in the fabric of the games. It's not active in the way it's not active, I think, but in every word you write, it comes through.
Yes. How much do you seek out people outside of the games industry or games community? I know it's a fluid definition, but it struck me again about some of the things I've seen here at Rezzed this weekend is it's always super refreshing whenever you get somebody come in from the outside, take a look at games and go like, well, this is obviously rubbish. Yeah. And it feels like there's a lot of you talk about, and I think you're absolutely right that there's a certain type of game player that has grown up playing a certain way and doesn't want that challenge. But I think also the industry as a whole is sometimes just it's that. I was about to say it was turtles all the way down, but like we're a big circle facing inwards a lot of the time. Yeah, it's a much better way to put it than
when we look across at the other people and see what they're doing, and if it's the same as what we're doing, then we think it might be okay. I don't know. I feel like I personally am always a bit of an outsider because in every other industry I've ever worked in, I was always the kind of nerd one that they would kick nerdy stuff to. I did book launches for sci-fi books because nobody else had ever read any sci-fi, that kind of thing, and I was seen as other and weird for having those interests. And within games, though I have always played games since I was a child, I am not your typical game playing person, and I actually am not very good at games, and it takes a very special game for me to like it enough that I would play even half of it. And I don't have much time to have a kid, etc. So I feel still the usefulness of me, and part of my discipline as a comms person is to question these things and to bring in the outside world. And we do things like sensitivity readings and consultations and writers' workshops and internships, incubations, and we bring people in. Yeah. But it's sort of my job to notice when we need to do that. Yeah. Which you don't think of as something that a marketer does, but communications is a huge range of stuff which begins at the very inception of the game.
It just occurred to me to ask, because I think when we were talking earlier, not to too inside baseball, but when it comes to talking about let's sit down and record a chat, which is what we're doing right now, obviously, there's an implication that means so go grab a designer, so go grab an artist, a programmer, someone who's, but actually the making and creating and showing off and finding of audiences for games is a more multidisciplinary product than that. I guess what I'm saying is comms is one of those invisible layers that is common to almost all game production, short of Alan Hazelton making games by himself and putting them out. But
there
yes,
are
you're right.
People who are able somehow to make and promote their own games at the same time. Yeah. And it takes a special kind of... It just takes a certain personality. I'm going to call out Tony, who's making Dead End Job, who is insanely good at self-promotion and game promotion and making the game. And he's at every event. He has an active Twitter. He knows exactly what works. Jake and Helen, who made Shadowhand, are very, very good at self-branding, self-promotion, and they always have it in mind.
They made me wear a big hat.
Everywhere you go. They've always got the tri-corner hats on. If nobody's seen them in person, they're always wearing fabulous clothes to identify themselves, and it's a really, really special thing if you're able to do both. And then say after your game launch to reflect and to put out blogs and to think about the whole nose to tail experience of making and releasing a game.
The Creating Crowbar's own Tom Francis is a good example of this, former game designer who's very good at speaking about his own game, basically, and all games, because that's kind of the job. I guess I wanted to talk about it, particularly in your context, because you are right that I suspect people might think that comms is purely for marketing. The measure of success is units sold on Steam, and obviously that's going to be a factor.
Yeah.
But actually, it strikes me that, particularly, I think with Failbetter, because you are finding an audience, a broader and more diverse audience for games, because you are making games for a broader range of people.
Definitely.
The reason we've just spoken, that you also, I think, have a role in actually kind of getting that across to people. This seems like one of the most challenging things across the entire games industry, is expressing, when you're trying to make that effort to do better, more diverse, more interesting things, is to say, this is a safe environment, and to communicate that.
Welcome.
Yes,
welcome. The funny thing for us is that we started with a browser game,
right?
Like in 2009, and on a browser, the browser is the most democratic platform.
Yes.
For a game, anybody can open a browser. So we had a 50-50. Back then, we only had an idea of 50-50 male-female split. A lot of our players are trans or non-binary, so there isn't a two-way split. But we know that the majority of our players now, the vast majority of our players, are male Steam users.
Yes.
So
that's interesting. Yeah.
It's gone that way. But initially, we were a studio founded on and being fueled by a browser game that made enough money to basically keep the lights on with some client work, and it was much easier to find new players that way, and then to kind of bring them in to Sunless Skies. But the idea of someone who doesn't play games coming on and having like the hardware and somewhere to sit in their house in front of a PC, I don't have that. I don't have a desk, I don't have a PC I can play at home, or a console. Like we forget, because we're a circle facing inward, that owning these pieces of kit is not a given. And mobiles obviously are a big deal for getting games into people's hands, but mobile gaming has become such a shiny bells and loops and
Skinner box kind of
thing. It's not somewhere that, I mean, we've recently had to shut down the Fallen London app that we put out because Fallen London was not a mobile friendly proposition in the end. It's a browser friendly proposition, and we're currently reworking it for like mobile responsive browser play instead. But as an app, it didn't have any bells, it didn't do the stuff that people feel that they want from that kind of game. Obviously there are exceptions, but that's like, if you're talking about bringing in people who would not usually play a PC game into gaming, it is extraordinarily difficult to find those people and sell to them. And I don't know how to convert someone who doesn't play PC games into a Steam user. Just to play my game. You know what I mean? Like, how do you get that guy over that person over the threshold? Like, let me tell you what Steam is. Well, it's a store owned by a games development company, so it's kind of proprietary in a funny way. And they're like, I don't even know. Is it Argos?
Exactly. And then when you've got this, and you signed up for the account, you then have to go and find our things. And please don't be alarmed or put off or frightened by anything you might see.
By anyone else's comments or whatever about that thing. Because I know you're going to like it.
I feel like we may be dangerously close to saying there's no solution to that, but
no, I think there is. I think that there's such a thing as overnight success that takes 10 years, and there's such a thing as word of mouth with meaning. Like, people talk about word of mouth success. You have there is broadcast word of mouth, where one person says something to a lot of people, and some of them might pick it up, but the connections there are very loose. But if you sincerely love an indie game, particularly, and you sincerely recommend it to someone else who you know would like it, even if they're not a game player, that kind of hand-to-hand recommendation is the most powerful thing, because games are this communication medium, and you know you feel a certain way about it, and you have a friend and you want them to feel that way. That's bloody meaningful stuff. It's meaningful as hell. Like, what more could you do to give a friend an experience like that? And that's what the nugget at the centre of kind of my work at comms is how to get people to feel a way and tell someone else who they know that will enjoy it.
And give people the means or the vocabulary
the tools,
to do so. It's I was interested in, so slightly related, slightly not, talking about a game, continuing to talk about a game, getting the game to the right people when you are also openly testing and building that game in front of people. That seems difficult.
Yeah, but happily people who are really game literate are happy to get involved with early access games. Although it's very much changed since the days of Sunless Sea.
Yeah, I've been interested how that was different actually.
We sold much better in early access for Sunless Sea. I think back in sort of 2014, oh god, it was that long ago. But early access was still kind of a new proposition.
It was, yeah.
And people were having a go on early access games because they hadn't really seen games in development before, and they wanted to oh, it's not done yet. I might see something cool that is, interesting. And then, people over time have collectively realised that it's perhaps a bit boring.
Yeah.
And the game isn't finished.
And it's not all there. And
it's
not all work.
there. Especially, and I think we have in some sense been burned by that because we were planning that it would bring in more revenue than it has.
Yeah.
But I have got this sort of feeling in the back of my mind that there are a lot of people waiting for these stories to be finished. And we're going, and that they know from Sunless Sea, perhaps they played it and they played it when it wasn't done, or they bounced off it, and now that this is a better game experience that isn't finished, they know they have to wait.
Yeah, I wonder to what extent as well that there's just some extremely loud walking. Just some very loud walking in this room. No, I was interested in this because I think I probably would fall into the category of people who snaffled up Sunless Sea as soon as it was available and haven't touched it. Now I'm confessing to you live that I haven't touched Sunless Skies because I'd like to wait till it was ready.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is partly also novelty. I think I've seen this a lot with people's sort of second. Not this is not your second game, it's your third, but it's second Steam game.
Yeah.
Is the first time it's Fallen London, but with a moving boat. When can I see that immediately?
Yeah.
And whereas this is Sunless Skies, but with a flying train.
Yeah.
Not that that's
It's an
reductive, but you get what I'm
iteration.
saying, right? Now it's more of a known quantity.
Yeah.
There's less of a rush to get in there straight away.
Sunless Sea was like a revolution.
Yeah.
We went from a text, essentially like a visual novel, choose your own adventure thing, to a game. That was seismic, and we were building it in front of us. What is this going to be? How is it going to work? How could Fallen London move? And now it's we've taken off all the hard edges that we had. You couldn't resize the text in Sunless Sea when it was new. So we were trying to play on big screen. So we've got text resizing, we've got UI resizing, controller support, accessibility options, parallax. It's like another dimension. This is Mordor, if you think of Fallen London as the Shire.
Right.
This is
And you went through this a lot of
we've been through the gap, and we've come out the other side, and we're throwing just jewellery into a massive pit. I don't know. No, it's
an amazing analogy for game development.
It's not a culmination for the series. I think we'll still do stuff in the Fallen London universe, but we're really pulling out all the stops because we made a game, and then therefore we learned how to make a PC game because we'd never done that.
Yeah, quite.
Despite being a long-running successful studio, we'd never had to make a real game. So now I think we're better at that. And it will be a better game experience. It will be more respectful of your time. People would die and lose so much progress that they just never came back.
Yes, and that always had a very complicated relationship with the kind of storytelling you were doing as well. That was, there's something strange about the effect that repetition has on blocks of beautifully written narrative when I just need cups of tea. Yeah,
and you had to do the other game content so often because you died so much, but now you're not returning to a port, you're going out into space. You're going on and on and on to different hub ports, at which point the game will save and your map will save. So when you die, you go back to the last large hub that you were at, and everything will shuffle that you had just done. So there's a lot less of returning home desperate, waiting for that music to play, and there's a lot more I have to go forward. I have no idea what I'm going to find.
Right.
I have no idea if what I need is there, which is a different kind of stress.
Yes, just exploring different kinds of stress.
Basically.
I think that's an interesting sort of way of thinking about not solving a problem necessarily, but approaching something people didn't enjoy as much about previous games, is to not just think about how do we get rid of the negative feeling, but from a game design point of view, how do you actually turn that into a different sort of
experience?
Positive experience, and also being okay with the fact that it's not Sunless Sea plus. It's not everything from Sunless Sea plus space trains.
This is the fantastic opportunity you have with a sequel in games that in film, say, you can't do.
Yeah.
Because in games you get so much specific critical feedback on things that you could then iterate on and improve. But if you wanted to do a film sequel, you often can't like capture the same joyfulness again.
Yeah.
Or like look at Zoolander 2. Don't
Indeed.
look at Zoolander 2.
I did recently watch Zoolander 2
Oh.
with him.
Oh,
We can have this conversation then.
Jesus wept.
Appalling, isn't it?
I could not believe they took the same grab bag of funny business and turned it into what a dog's breakfast.
That's
I was
appalling.
furious. I got up and walked around the house hitting stuff like that. I
Sorry,
just
recording.
absolutely could not believe that they whiffed it so badly.
It's incredible. Like, there's almost something like almost if it was in a story that this had happened.
Yeah.
If there was a framing narrative around Zoolander 2, which was about how hard it is to make a sequel
Yeah.
to Zoolander, it would actually be brilliant.
Yeah.
It'd be like a kind of Ed Wood sort of thing.
Oh, could they have done more wrong? I was embarrassed for everybody who was in it. Anna Wintour was in it.
She
the
was.
woman from Vogue was in it.
I know, and phoning it in even in the context of a single line.
Oh God,
It's
painful. But what? So the point is that they were like, oh, what's really fun? Oh, a silly sequence where they go out and get cappuccinos and then have a petrol fight in a petrol station and the whole car blows up in Zoolander 1.
Yes.
They tried to do that same thing again with like
ice
chocolate
cream,
sundaes
yeah.
and then he flips his car. And it was just so tone deaf and completely wrong. Bringing it back to the games, you know what people have played. You get thousands and thousands and thousands of reviews and comments and feedback, and you know how people. And you know if you have stats in your game, then you get specific stats. So then you get the opportunity to iterate. You can try doing something similar, and then make it better through iteration and through community collaboration.
Yeah, that's an interesting. It's gotten busier in here, so forgive us on the recording. That's interesting because I would definitely say that there was a Failbetter style, even though you bring in a lot of different writers, and you know Sunless Skies and Skies presumably as well, parcel out stories. I was about to say content, and then I sort of internally slapped myself.
Yeah, I hate the content.
Me too. No one likes it. No one likes it. We all do it. It's like capitalism. I don't know. In a way that can give a writer ownership over an area, for example.
Yeah.
However, there is certainly a tone. There's a tone and a style and a kind of type of story. Not that it necessarily. I don't think it's ever failed in that regard. I don't think it's ever reached sort of self-parody necessarily. But I sort of go into a game of yours feeling like I kind of know what type of characters I'm going to meet. Yeah. And that feels like the best moments are when that is undermined rather than simply catered to, if that makes sense. Not that catered to is easy.
But you have to do a certain percentage of this is what people will expect
in
order to have a percentage of...
Yeah, that proportion is really interesting to try and figure out. Right?
And we have an editor, helpfully, Olivia Wood, who is a BAFTA Breakthrough Brit, which is very exciting.
Triple B.
And I love her, and she's very scary, but she's fabulous. She has been playing Fallen London since it came out. She was a fan. So her likeness is in Sunless Skies as the Cadbury Air. But now she works for us. And she has an overview on everything, so she pulls together all these different ports, and we look at it as a whole piece, but it's in her brain that it kind of coalesces into is this right? And it's done by feel, and that's the kind of beauty and also the shame of it, is because it's not something you can really teach.
Yeah.
She knows the world, but she used to edit fiction, so she used to edit big old fantasy books and world building and stuff is her forte.
That is a really interesting. Maybe going back to the point of like, how do you form your writer's room? I've heard said, and I kind of agree in a lot of the cases, that one of the issues that game writing can sometimes have is that a new generation of writers is often made up of fans of the previous thing.
Yeah.
So you start with something that might be usually inspired by 1980s comics or action films. Funny that. But eventually you end up with fans of the photocopy of the photocopy, and that's not universally true, and that process doesn't usually universally produce bad results.
Yeah.
And actually, I think remarkably, there's an overlap between fandom being a way for marginalised writers to find a way into the system, producing good results, and sort of fanhood being a way for the selling system to perpetuate itself, producing bad results. Yeah. So there are two kind of analogous processes there that I don't want to confuse with each other. But it's interesting to me that, like Olivia, for example, is a good example. Yes, comes in as a fan and a critical fan who's able to look over the whole thing.
Yeah.
But also fundamentally had professional expertise in exactly the thing you required her to do.
Fantastic, really. You couldn't write a character better than Olivia to be our editor. But yeah. And the diversity of interest is also something we fall down on in games, I think.
Yeah.
Because there's a kind of homogeneity of like comics, TV, and certain things, but not many people who are particularly interested in horticulture or musical theatre or whatever.
Right.
Like, so the more, like I mentioned horticulture because our former game director Liam loves bees and mice and animals and woodland and folk music.
Very much live in that environment myself.
Right. So, and I really love musical theatre and nail varnish and just all sorts of silly business. And I'm a parent and I'm all these other things. And we need to foster relationships and interests outside of the world of games in order to make better ones.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And also, I don't want to be reductive, but I do wish there were more game musicals.
God, that'd be great.
Have you played Dominic Humple's? No, it's one of the only ones I can think of. Point-and-click adventure, which is also a sort of Brechtian musical.
Brilliant.
You should play that.
Sexy Brutale.
Yeah.
It's sort of taken from the idea of interactive theatre.
Yes.
And Steve No More and the Drown Man in London, the Punch Drunk, right? So that I've never played another game like that, and that specifically came from their own personal experience of doing something that wasn't playing more games.
Indeed. It's a good note to end on.
It's the game's equivalent of mad cow disease.
Indeed. What? Yeah.
Cows eating cows.
Oh yeah, yes, exactly. Be eating the same cow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes your brain.
Yeah, exactly. Just get too many of the cows. Yeah.
Oh, that was the worst ending. No, we had a good one and I ruined it.
No, you didn't. I ruined it. Let's fight about that. No, so actually, weirdly, that's not just the ending of maybe this recording. That's actually, I think Rezzed just ended.
Rezzed is over. I'm going to go give a free T-shirt to somebody.
Excellent. I might go home and go to sleep.
Good.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Thanks very much for listening. That's the last, as I said, of our Rezzed chats. You can also, of course, find the podcast we recorded at Rezzed via our feed or on createandcrowbar.com as well, where we talk about some of the same games that I've talked to creators of in this series and everything else we've been playing, and Crusader Kings 2 for some reason, and questions from the audience. It's a lot of fun. Hope you like it. As this is the last one of these that I've done for now, I'd really like feedback on whether this is something you would like Crate and Crowbar to do a bit more of. I know we've talked in the past about getting more guests on, that kind of thing. This is, I think, a fun format. I'm not saying that we invented the interview by any means, but it's certainly different for us to be doing these kind of one-on-one conversations with developers. If it's something you'd like us to seek out and do more of, then we can absolutely do that. And that's something that Patreon particularly allows us to pursue. So once again, thank you to our Patreon backers, and details for that can be found at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. And for everything else, you can find it at crateandcrowbar.com or on Twitter at Crate and Crowbar. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.